Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Indian Express Group, a very warm welcome to the Indian Express Think series on gender, presented by IOH. I Think is a forum that brings together thought leaders, policymakers, and corporate leaders to encourage a substantive exchange of ideas and get the best minds to give it directions and solutions. So far, the series has focused on how the post-COVID economic recovery can be made gender responsive. Today, the focus is on future of work, upskilling for the post-pandemic world. Today's session will host an insightful panel discussion. So please join me in welcoming our guests, Abhishek Singh, President and CEO, National E-Governance Division, Farzana Haq, Global Head, Tata Consultancy Services, Madhu Singh Sirohi, Head of Policy Programs and Outreach in India for Meta, Ritu Devan, Vice President, Indian Society of Labour Economics, Vedmani Tiwari, Chief Operating Officer, National Skill Development Corporation. In the end, we will have some concluding remarks from Dr. Niharika Vora, Vice Chancellor, Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University. Today's session will be moderated by Rinku Ghosh, editor of Special Projects, The Indian Express. I request our audience to please remain connected throughout this session on social media. You can use the hashtag gender in India. Rinku, will you now please share the introductory note with us?
Of course. Thank you, Pooja. Well, as Pooja has introduced the larger bandwidth of the I Think series of dialogues. So today we are going to talk about women and the fourth industrial revolution, which is clearly upon us. So the age of automation and artificial intelligence may offer thousands of new job opportunities and avenues for economic advancement. But what do they do for women who are anyway battling challenges of marginalization in traditional disciplines? Now, according to a McKinsey report, and this is very alarming, up to 160 million women globally may need to transition between occupations by 2030, but with higher skill abilities. To weather this disruption, women have to be skilled, mobile-friendly, mobile-savvy, tech-savvy, and most importantly, will need targeted support to help them move forward. Technology adoption is an enabler. Undoubtedly, it is an enabler, but only if women can take advantage of it as a transition of opportunity. And should they do so, they can maintain their current levels of employment. If not, then we are afraid that gender inequality at work could really worsen. How do we future-proof our women workforce and make them industry ready? So that is the question we are attempting to answer in this session, Women, the Future of Work, Upskilling in a Post-Pandemic Scenario. And we are lucky to have a multi-sectoral panel, representatives of corporate India, representatives of government, and of course, academia. So let me just take you through the quick introductions. We have with us Abhishek Singh, President and CEO, National E-Governance Division, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Digital India. He has a track record of implementing several development programs. And as one of the key enforcers of Digital India, he may be able to shed some light on what we are discussing today. Vedmani Tiwari is CEO at National Skill Development Corporation. Mr. Tiwari's strategies have helped in creating sector skill councils, and he has worked for both the public and the private sector. We have Madhu Singh Sirohi with us. She is Head of Policy Programs and Government Outreach at Meta in India, and she has worked extensively in social development and has designed many grassroots projects that demonstrate the transformative effects of technology in education, health, and in enabling access. We have Ritu Devan, Vice President, Indian Society of Labour Economics. She's also retired director and retired HOD of the Department of Economics, University of Mumbai. And she is, of course, the first woman HOD in the Department of Economics, Mumbai. Farzana Haq, she is a senior member of the TCS leadership team. She has really risen through the ranks at Tata. She is now a board member, philanthropist, angel investor, and mentor. and she has worked on gender and pay parity for women. She is on board also at FICCI for Greater 50, which works on empowering women through entrepreneurship. So now we will just begin our round of questions. We'll go in a circular pattern, beginning with Mr. Abhishek Singh. You see, Mr. Singh, there is a figure here which says that though women make up almost half of India's growing population, only 38% of them have access to a formal bank account, most of which are barely used. And this continued exclusion from the formal financial sector represents a missed opportunity to scale India's digital economy. Even if we talk about rural women entrepreneurs, they don't have collateral to bank on through formal finance channels. So how can we push digital financial services when there is such a big gap? And are digital literacy and awareness programs enough? And you have seen it better than any of us on the ground, how this works. So what needs to be done here? Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Rinku, and indeed grateful to Indian Express for putting up such a stellar panel. And in fact, looking at the profile of a co-panelist, I was looking forward to listening to them and trying to get more ideas with regard to what we need to do. The problem statement with regard to the first question you already highlighted, and it's not too difficult to know why women only have 38%, only 38% of women have bank accounts. This has been the case for us. Financial inclusion has been a challenge for a long time. In fact, before Aadhaar came, only 40% adults in Indians have bank accounts. And after introduction of Aadhaar, which solved the key issue of individual, a citizen, Indian to be able to prove who he is, the problem of financial inclusion has been solved to some extent. And as per data, 81% Indians do have bank accounts today if they're able to prove their identity. Women having lesser access to bank accounts primarily because traditionally women have not been given the opportunity to assert themselves as heads of families. The land rights, even though this has been guaranteed by the government, by the courts and the government, still are yet to be adopted in practice. So very often they don't have titles, they don't have land in their name, they don't have properties in their name, and very often the traditional patriarchal way of functioning of our society ensures that if the bank account is to be opened, it gets opened in the name of the male member. Under the government schemes like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, efforts have been made to ensure that the subsidy which is released for making toilets or making houses is released in the name of the women member of the family. So that has been one way to ensure that. Under various schemes like PM Mudra scheme and other schemes, benefits are given if the benefits are given for women beneficiaries. Similarly, property registration, many states have given concessions to in the registration rates if the women are if the property is registered in the name of women. So there have been some measures by the government, but I would say that we would need a lot of proactive action of building awareness, making women financially literate, making them believe that yes, if they have an identity, they can have a bank account. So a lot of work needs to be done by the civil society, by the government, by all of us together in order to ensure that the access to bank account and financial inclusion for women becomes higher.
Okay, but sir, how do you talk about a collective effort, but anything specific you are doing to make sure that the digital financial services work at the grassroots level in the villages? Are there something like bank sakis? What is the government's network at the absolute grassroots level to make sure that women can access safe financial services safely and securely, and they are the intended beneficiaries of some of the government programs and facilitators that will help them in their entrepreneurship at the grassroots level?
The outreach that is done by banks, the outreach that has been done by institutions like common service centers, which are the banking correspondents of various banks, they are the ones who take banking to the doorsteps of people. So today we have a network of almost 400,000 common service centers in the villages, and most of them are banking correspondents of the banks, and they are equipped to open bank accounts for women. So while the facility to open the bank account is available almost in every village, the empowerment of women in order to ensure that they are able to access these services. We need to work on that. And while we may say theoretically that yes, women, if they want, if they have an Aadhaar card, they can go to a CSC or they can go to a bank and get a bank account opened. While this is technically possible, but in order to ensure that this actually becomes in practice, we need to do a lot of outreach. We need to do a lot of awareness building exercise, and we need to also provide value to what a woman will do once they get a bank account. When they are able to get her wages, get the subsidies, gets whatever the government is transferring as cash transfers, it goes into bank account, then there will be a greater demand for women to have bank accounts. Even in the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme, the women are recognized as heads of families, and whichever states are implementing cash transfers instead of food subsidies, there also women would need bank accounts. So it would require a combination of enabling the legal provisions, enabling the ecosystem of common service centers and banking facilitators to open the bank accounts, and more importantly, the awareness and outreach exercise in order to ensure that more and more women are able to access and benefit from these services.
Okay, thank you. So now my question to Mr. Tiwari. You see, the National Skill Development Corporation has a host of schemes. The Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, the NAPS, the JSS, the CTS, the CITS. Now, the problem is that even despite these skill councils and training, women are confined to very feminized roles. So they are equipped to be in the beauty, the retail, the apparel sector, the healthcare sector. We see very little of women enrollment and absorption in, say, high-tech or mechanized sectors. So what is the NSDC doing to ensure that, you know, women are prepared for the future? We are future-proofing them by including them in the high-tech and mechanized sectors too, rather than, you know, confining them to a set formula of where their skills can be applied in the handicraft, apparel, you know, the traditional skill sets.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel, and I'm really excited to hear views of all the fellow panelists here, because this topic is extremely relevant. The question that you are asking is that what is being done to mainstream women into job roles where they were not considered earlier. Before going there, I definitely want to bring this on the table that there is a livelihood question also involved. When we run a mass level program, we have to be conscious of that there is a livelihood question, and that some job roles are traditionally which women adopt because of their peculiarities. That happen, and I personally believe that they will continue to go around for some time. But what we are trying to do differently is that can we bring economic empowerment in those roles? Should we only be skilling a woman to be a sewing machine operator, or we provide her relevant skills to become a boutique operator? That is an entrepreneurship question. That is where we are taking a lot of initiative in this direction. The entrepreneurship is becoming an important thing for us. It's not only about just skill the person and let the person find his or her own destiny. So we are working with non-banking financing companies to provide loans to this section where they do not have collaterals. And can skill become an important criteria for somebody to become credit worthy? That is one area where we are working. And we have partnered with many NBFCs now, and we are very confident that we will open up access to finance to women as far as the entrepreneurship. The other area, as my fellow panelist was just now talking about, the mistake was about digital skills. So even if a woman, it's not today's in today's world, it's not important to know just being. I'm again giving an example of saying digital operator just to drive home a point. The person also needs to know digital skill, how to make a financial transaction over Paytm, how to go to Google to find out new designs, etc. that are coming. So this is how we are trying to mainstream even those functions where the women have a traditional job. But I would definitely move on from here. And we have now started focusing on bringing women to mainstream future job roles. And we have started the coding skills for women. A lot of focus is being given on women. We have started coding skill programs where you don't need a engineering degree or even a science background. Even it's a boot camp style coding classes where a 12th pass can actually be trained, and that's where the salary levels are also quite good. So that is one area that coding for women has started. We also launched a Skill India Impact Bond, and where the private sector impact fund is being mobilized, and there also we are now looking for the competencies in financial sector and the tech sectors, where the women can be not only be trained into those skills, but also how do we provide them a connectivity to the workplace? Because it's one thing that you skill them into a certain competencies, but it's also another thing that how do you ensure that they get connected to the economic opportunities. So with this, we have started the Skill India Impact Bond is focusing on this, and these are the initiatives that we're taking.
Okay, thank you. So I will straight away go to Ritu. Ritu, you were mentioning in our earlier discussion that, while there is growth, somewhere the growth figures hide a deeper story of gender de-equalization. So will you define gender de-equalization, and why do you think, women are being progressively left behind despite enabling schemes? If you can just shed light on that macro picture for us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rinku, and delighted that you're organizing this discussion, because it's something which is very important. It doesn't get into mainstream debate at all. The issue before us, and this is something which I've been working on for a very long period of time, and working at the ground level, at the macro level, at the state level, etc. And I think, all our statements have to be really based on facts. Okay, so the importance of data as an economist. Of course, data these days is very hard to come by. I mean, our employment data has not been upgraded, but we know that there are universities and institutions which are collecting data. So, when you mentioned the number of 160 million women worldwide, India has 120 million women who are out of the workforce. And this is not only the pandemic, but I think we also take the issue of demonetization and what it did to small scale sectors and MSMEs, and of course the implementation of GST. Added to this are several other issues. Some have been mentioned. One is that of financial inclusion. And if one sees the structural constraints, what I call, one are patriarchal constraints in terms of mindsets, which is really in a way seeing the problem in a very reductionist kind of a manner. But there are broader macro issues which reduce the potential of financial inclusion, and one is privatization of public banks. Because, our rural, I think there's enough RBI data to show that when the number of banks decrease, particularly public sector banks, financial inclusion of women decreases progressively in exactly the same way. So having accounts is one, but what my fieldwork has shown in rural and in urban areas is, the women say कि bank account तो है पर पैसा नहीं है bank account maintain करने के लिए. So even if it is zero account, there are many other rules and regulations which are being increasingly put, including, charges on withdrawals, on ATMs, etc., etc. This whole thing of user fees which is there. Second, when we talk about the employment component, I think if we see India has the lowest female work participation rate in, it used to be South Asia, but now it's all of Asia. And in fact, one of the three most lowest states in the countries in the entire world. That is one aspect. The increase in the gender wage gap which has gone up very, very much so in the past few years. So when we talk about skilling women, there is this entire concept when we say development, and that word has just disappeared from any kind of political or economic debate. And we focus only on growth. And if we see the sectoral breakup, the only sector which has grown is the informal sector in some kind of a manner, and the other is agriculture, in spite of decreased support to them. Private sector has not provided any kind of an employment. I mean, if you see the first year of the pandemic, 100 listed manufacturing companies which are studied, their profits rose by about 18%, and the wage share of that fell by a little higher at 19%. So, when we talk about women, and when I talk about the process of de-equalization, it's also a process of de-development, that what had been attained at some point of time, very minimal, I'm not romanticizing the past at all, but we have to see this decline which has taken place very dramatically. And within this, we talk about skilling, extremely important. But I think that's already been mentioned. What are the roles? What are the typical traditional roles where skilling has taken place? And this is what I call the PPP mode, I mean, papad, pickle, and petticoat. That's all, the kind of skilling which has taken place. Yeah. And within this, the digital divide, as we know, has increased very much. And I'm talking of particularly in the last 2 years. And I was hoping very sincerely that this budget would take the thing forward, because we know that about, I think, almost 90% of people in the rural areas, women in the rural areas, do not own a mobile. So, what technology or IA, etc., we're talking about unless we get our facts into place. There are many other issues. One, of course, is the decreased allocations in the budget. I mean, your Ministry of Women and Child and various forms of social sector spending have been decreasing very, very dramatically. I think skilling itself has fallen. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Tiwari and Mr. Singh will correct me if I'm wrong. I think this budget was about, it was not even 3,000 as far as I know. 2,999 crores is what they had. So what do we need to achieve? And do we have, when we talk about achieving this, is the commitment to achieving skilling, does it find itself into, is there a financial articulation of that kind of a commitment?
Absolutely.
So many other issues, which I think we can discuss maybe later.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go to Ms. Sirohi. You heard Ms. Diwan talk about the gaps, and you yourself at one point, you were the first to focus on the gender gap in phone ownership. And now, those smartphone ownership is high in India, and it has deeply penetrated quite a bit of India. Women still continue to be left out of phone ownership. Along with that, Ms. Sirohi, if you could share how your company Meta has, tried to sort of bridge this gap through the goal scheme that is called Going Online as Leaders. It's a digital skilling initiative by Meta to train tribal girls from 5 states as of now. So, and to groom them as leaders and entrepreneurs. So if you can, give us some anecdotes of the kind of impact Goal has had. And of course, you can begin with the issue of phone ownership, the very basic tool for taking forward digital empowerment.
So thank you so much for having me here, Rinku. I'm so delighted to be in such an august panel, and I'll just echo what other panelists said about the fact that this is a very important conversation. I myself, from a personal standpoint, always feel that there is a great amount of work to be done and a great amount of land to be covered in terms of getting women front and center of being in the landscape of how we consider skilling, jobs, their participation in the economy. Now, based on a mobile gender gap report by GSMA, Indian women are 15% less likely to own a mobile phone and are almost 33% less likely to use mobile internet services than the men in our country. this divide is actually, born out of these multiple disadvantages that we've seen women in India sort of face constantly over over time. Mr. Van has spoken to it to say there's the urban-rural divide, there is an income-based digital divide, and then there's also the intra-household discrimination. We've seen this play out into the gender gap. This is not a conversation which is recent. In early years, I worked in mobility, and right through, we've been trying to contribute to try and see how can organizations or corporations that are working within this milieu be able to support. I mean, women in rural areas are obviously less likely to own mobile phones. This is because of lack of available technology infrastructure. It could be, compared to the urban areas. And there's also a need for an increased digital penetration by especially government initiatives. So there's a lot to be done for this challenge to be addressed. One of the things that we see that, if we can provide, say, sustainable livelihood opportunities to attend to some of these challenges, easy credit can support the reducing, this income-based divide piece. Some of the panelists did speak to creating access to, some kind of credit. While the government and private sector have introduced some schemes, but they need to provide much better access to finance for women. There's always scope for designing new schemes, for, tweaking the existing ones to make them more women friendly. Like Mr. Van previously said about, there are certain aspects of, minimum balance, about withdrawal charge, etc., which still are very real deterrents to women coming on the mainstream. And unless the income question is looked at, we're not able to solve for the impact that has probably on ownership of, other things, and amongst them, of course, the mobile phone. Now, the intra-household discrimination, this can be reduced by spreading awareness around the issue. We ourselves do a number of programs through our platforms to try and create awareness on the issue, along with the government and many other entities we work with. And I think it has to be a collaborative effort to provide avenues for awareness to this issue, that why is there this intra-household discrimination on device ownership, and what can be the impact. So I think there's some piece of work to still be done there. Providing easy access to mobile services, offering affordable smartphone loans for women perhaps, and increasing these digital literacy programs for women and girls through perhaps government or corporate interventions are again some ways by which we can try and reduce the gender gap. We feel like perhaps the way we deal easily with a phone, it comes that easily to someone, or just one skilling, session given, or addressing a multiple group of women together, that's enough to get them to understand how to use this device. But that's not so. Skilling itself has so many aspects, and a learner's ability, their background, the circumstances under which they are attending that particular session, all of them come into play. So I think there's a great amount of sensitivity required even in letting these women, once they are maybe even in possession of a smartphone, to be able to do justice and be able to contribute to reducing this gender divide. So I think those are all some very real challenges that this gender divide question has always had. And I think it's going to be a collaborative effort. I'm so glad we're talking about it. Yeah. I'll just take 2 minutes to address your question on the GOAL program. Yeah. So going online as leaders was again something that we had thought of from a point of view of inclusion. It was a program that was designed specifically to provide mentorship, not to just tribal girls, but to tribal youth across the country. This was to be done digitally, and we worked with the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Why this population was selected was also because inclusion is an agenda and people are excluded due to different reasons: economics, geography, gender. And in this case, there was a need, there was a real wealth of tribal handicraft, possible entrepreneurial efforts, but there was very little understanding of how to access digital markets. So this is why we decided to work and create a mentor-mentee program and get young people to have mentors who can talk to them about not only just digital training or digital marketing, but communication, life skills, leadership, entrepreneurship, how to get the confidence to access what is already there. This is particularly true in the case of women who need a little bit more than just core skilling on subjects or just an understanding of how to reach out to financial inclusion. They need that hand holding, and we felt mentors who are already there, especially from the same communities, could be a very strong foothold for them to move forward. We felt after our program, the impact assessment report showed that more than 75% of the mentees felt that their interpersonal skills have improved. And 69% of the mentees were either able to build businesses online, or at least open pages, or, start interacting with the internet. This may not immediately result in, a big change, but just that confidence of coming online, feeling that leadership potential is a great sort of an initiator of this journey.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yohi. So now I'll go to Ms. Haq, Farzana. Apart from your profile at TCS, which I will go into later, you have been a mentor and angel investor, and you started something called Sri Shakti platform, which is about enabling entrepreneurship and helping women scale their businesses at all levels. Now, having worked as part of that platform, you have come face to face with real challenges that women face in scaling their businesses and entrepreneurship, even if they have the intent to pursue it. So can you share some of these experiences, first-hand experiences that you have had, and give us a sense of the challenges at the grassroots level that need to be addressed before any of these schemes or any of the skilling intent that we have become, effective?
Good evening, guys. I think the fundamental shift in thinking, this is not a gender conversation. It's not about gender inequality. It's an economic conversation. It's about economic equality. Yeah. How can half the population of the world that holds up the sky not be a part of the economic engine? It's not a gender conversation. It should never be a gender conversation. I think every parent teaches their children equality. Abhishek has gone to the same college school, his wife, his sister, his children, so have I. And when we enter the workforce, how can I not be a part of that workforce all my life? I run today a multi-billion-dollar business. And even at Davos, when I went and I was speaking at Davos a couple of years back, I just delivered my son. And I think most of the questions that came to me were like, you're here, who's looking after your child? And there was a colleague of mine, he also had a son, he also had a child, but no one was asking him that question.
Yeah.
So I know Madhu is from there, so I remember Cheryl telling that, you don't know Farzana, I know her for 20 years. Everyone can do this. So all of us fundamentally, especially in India, need to believe that we will be the intellectual capital of the world. The technological trends that are shaping the entire humanity, right, will look at global talent pools. Yeah. And it will come from India. I'm a huge believer of that. Any interview of mine you will watch, you will see that. And talent pool is gender agnostic. It needs to be. So I have the privilege and blessing and also the curse of being on both sides of the table, right? So while I'm an Indian, I am very Western from an education work experience. I've never worked in India before. I worked with one company for 25 years, but I worked always in the West. So then when you look at equality, the people who will fall out of workforce will again have caregiving responsibility issues, right? But in India, when the women fall out of workforce, is usually a lot of social pressures around them.
Yep.
Yeah, and that mindset has to change. Everyone on this panel and everyone who's hearing us has a huge moral responsibility of encouraging everyone in their families. Sab apna ghar hi dekh le bahut hai. Seeing that their sisters are supported, their wives are supported, their cousins are supported, then all policies will come into place. Whether it's Digital India, every other policy will only work if the workforce has women in it, Rinku.
Yep.
During COVID, I saw so many women who I mentor for years, saying we can't do this. We will not be able to work because we can't be doing Zoom calls and work from home and still looking after the mother-in-law and the a parent and looking after the child's online school. So it's not something. I'll give you an example. Every day in the morning, for a couple of hours, and a couple of hours in the evening, I do a review with my global teams.
Yeah.
So I have teams working across the group in different time zones. I noticed that a lot of time, the women leaders on my review have not put on the video on. The Zoom video is off.
Yeah.
So, I noticed it for a couple of days, and then I called them up. I said, what happened? Why are your videos off? They think because we are struggling. I don't even have time to comb my hair and sit on a Zoom call.
Yep.
I'm preparing breakfast. I'm doing online school. I'm in shatters, and I can't take it anymore. It becomes a mental health issue, right? So I think we need to believe that this is an economic situation, and it's an economic crisis we as a nation will face if you look at the number of women who are graduating or who get into engineering, or IS, civil servants, look at the list, look at the women, look at the number of people who qualify, the gender, and look after 20 years where the gender thing goes.
Absolutely.
I've been working for 24 years, same company, same industry, and it's very alarming that, in 2022, I still have so many people in my, the people I mentor within the company, within corporate India, saying, I can't do this. And these are very, very highly acclaimed, highly growth-oriented, achieving ladies, individuals. They've done the IITs, the IIMs, they've gone to Harvard, they have done their work, they've earned their stripes. But, the policies and in the private sector, all our processes are set not keeping the various stages of a human's life in place, right? Somehow, every time we have worked, it has been very male.
Yeah.
So they have had always a wife or a mother looking after things. So when I would travel with my boys when they were small, it was a genuine struggle.
Yeah.
It was a genuine struggle to work and to raise children. And I have been very vociferous in every conversation that I hold, that why do we always talk about the glamour of becoming a powered woman or a leader and getting these great ET, FT, whatever awards we get? Why don't we talk about the journey of getting there? It is full of struggles and challenges. And the people who have stood by me are friends. Families obviously are given in every stage. But I am very blessed with fabulous friends that I've worked very hard to maintain all my life. They have allowed me to succeed. They have not allowed me to fail. Every time I have fallen, they have raised me up and said, no, you have to stay the course. So one, it's an economic conversation. Second, women have to stay the course. All policies, all processes, we need to have at least 50% women on all boards across industries, sectors,
that's a very
everything.
significant point. Yeah.
Someone cannot set the policy for me. I have to set up the policy for myself and my group of, gender who has to do with a lot of caregiving. Caregiving across the world more or less falls on the woman. How many of us can afford great staff and teams and that? The reality is, let's assume with the majority that we all need help. We need women on boards of public companies, on private companies, on policy making, because then they will make policy which works for us.
Yeah.
It is time that women in India become the hero of their own lives.
Yeah.
Unless women become the hero of their own life, you will always be sitting and hoping that someone will create this for you.
Yeah.
कोई नहीं करेगा, कोई हुकूमत आके नहीं करती है, आपको खुद करना पड़ता है.
And that's true.
I've said this at Davos, I've said this at Aspen. Every conversation of mine you all will hear. We cannot wait for saviors. We are not going to play the card that, women need help. No, women need to just be themselves and just apply themselves. See, if let's say I recruit 100, so we are what? 700 million employees right now worldwide, out of which 40% are women.
Yeah.
So I have ensured and enabled in various conversations that women stay the course.
Yeah. So I will now go to Mr. Singh. This of sensitization that has come up very seriously in the course of our discussion. And you have programs like Wireless Women for Empowerment, W2E2. You have Mahila E-Hearts. So, how many of these programs, what is the representation of women leaders leading these programs, and what is the conversation you as a representative of the government drive to make women aware and sensitive to their equality in terms of gender and opportunity, say at the village level, at the block level? It is very difficult. It's a difficult societal problem, and you must be facing very many hurdles to do that. So as a policy maker and as a policy implementer, what are those enablers, and how do you remove these obstacles, and what is the way that you try to change the social mindset?
Yeah, in fact, very critical question. And I was just thinking over when Farzana was speaking, and Madhu, with regard to the challenges that women face and how we can enable, how we can kind of remove some of these obstacles. And I was just reminded of an incident which I would just share about 20 years back. I was working as the chief development officer in the district called Sultanpur in UP. And we just had panchayat elections. And in those elections, there was 33% reservation for women. So after the elections, we had 23 blocks, and we had a meeting with the block pramukhs. So as per the reservation, 1/3 should have been women. At least 8 should have been women. And in the meeting when it started, it was all full of men. There were no women in that meeting. There were more than 24 people. So I asked what happened. Did we not implement the constitutional mandate of the reservations? So they said, no, we did. So I said, okay, who are you are? So some of them were actually men who were elected, and the rest of them introduced themselves as Pramukh Pati and Pramukh Pita. And so they were husbands and men who had come. I said, you have not got elected. Why are you here? No, they are at home. They are busy at home. So we thought we'll represent them here. So we took a tough stand. We threw them out of the meeting and said that nothing doing, you have to come there. And then we started a campaign for similarly empowering gram panchayats, women, because 1/3 of the village chiefs also were women, and we tried to build confidence in them. We ran training programs, orientation, what they should do, what they should not do. And 6 months after this incident, it was reported widely in the local newspapers then. 6 months after, I had a woman coming into my office, all in ghungat and all, and she said that she wanted to kind of share something with me. And she told me that she is the Pradhan, and her husband and her husband's younger brother, they have made her sign blank checks, and she is afraid that something may go wrong. So I was taken aback, in a conservative UP village, a woman coming forward and doing this. So I got it verified. It was true. Then I counseled them. I brought them. We did not take a police action to avoid other consequences. We spoke to her husband. We ensured that the woman she was quite not very educated, but she was quite aware of what is right and what is wrong. So we kind of empowered that. And then without disclosing who they are, we use this example to educate other women Pradhans also about their rights and their privileges. Then thereafter, a year after, when we are looking at the village development plans, which each panchayat makes, in fact, I was surprised to find that by and large, on an average, the villages which had got the women as their heads as the pradhans, the sarpanches, their plans focused more on doing something for the school, putting up a boundary, or getting a hand pump, water supply, or doing something with Anganwadi centers. But the men, the village development plans, which the villages which had the men as the pradhan, they focused mainly on roads and infrastructure and that kind of thing. So that also became very interesting aspect. And in one of the meetings, I was asking them, how is it that this is so different? Why is it that the women pradhans are focusing on more social issues, and the men are focusing more on infra sectors? So again, one of the women pradhans who was educated, she said that we get only 33% of the reservation, but we represent 70% of the population. Then I again asked, how come 70? 50 is okay, but why 70? Then she said, we represent the children also. So if you give them the right opportunity, if you give them the right tools, whether it's the pradhan level or whether it's a company level, corporate level, startups, or as we go up the ladder, if we give them place at the board, if we give them the right opportunities, women would know what to do. You don't need to be very patriarchal in trying to educate. We just need to give them the right platforms, the right opportunities, and ensure that their voice is heard. So that is what we need to collectively work on, and ensure that if 20 years back, village pradhans in a discrete village in UP they could do something like that. Today in 2022, women are there to take their place. We only need to remove the obstacles. We need to enable them. We need to give them the rightful place and ensure that we benefit from the insights that women come in. And there are reports which shows that women-led companies do much better. So if we can believe in that, trust in that, and actually practice what we read and talk, then a lot can happen.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Mr. Singh. So I will now, taking on from that thread, I will like to pose my next question to Mr. Tiwari. Mr. Tiwari, you talked about PPPs, with companies which helps in not only skilling women, but, placing them in relevant jobs. So, you talked about, mainstreaming them as well. So in your opinion, how soon do you see the shop floor changing? Shop floor and assembly lines of, say, automated sectors, something like the automobile sector or any other technical sector?
The good news is that definitely the corporate is mindful of this fact that women are making difference to workplaces. Recently, I was in the Hero factory in Manesar, and the feedback that I got from them was that in the roles which were considered tough for women, like welding, etc., also, what they found is that women are doing much better than the men. Exactly what Mr. Abhishek was talking about. They did even one more, and then I was talking to one of our another corporate organization. What they did is that they put one assembly line only women, and the production from that line increased. So while discussing, it emerged that the commitment to work is much higher among the women. Right now, what the struggle is to source the women. I am very confident now that the shop floors are want women. You recently might have heard that Ola Electric went for all women manufacturing for their two-wheeler electric. So that demonstrates that there is a willingness on corporate side, and definitely there is a place. We have to support the women in their social sphere, that there is a social environment and their families come forward and let them come to these areas. That's where, while we have seen this change in urban areas, it is the work needs to be done in the semi-urban and rural areas. That's more about awareness and awareness about opportunities. That the work in the non-traditional space is more rewarding than the traditional workplace where the women are working. So awareness and communication is definitely we are working on, and we are also as an organization, we provide funding support to skilling institutions. When we are approving their programs, this aspect of how they are bringing women into technical roles is an important consideration in rating their funding requests, and that's how we are mainstreaming that the access to technical skills is solved for, and even the financial inclusion also, as I told you that we have partnered with NBFCs, and there also we are working on a very targeted mode that women, the inclusion should be a defining feature, and women, transgender and such excluded groups are taken care of. So these are the ways in which we are bringing both access to the skills and also the financial inclusion for because many of these job roles require a fee-based market. They just can't come from grant-based markets. So providing them financial support is also a very good.
I'm glad you've brought transgenders into that marginalized groups category. I think it's very important. So before I go to Ritu, maybe request all those who are listening in or all those who are watching us live just now, just post your questions on the chat box and we'll try to get them answered by a panel as much as possible. So Ritu, Mr. Tiwari was just mentioning about shop floors and industrial level training. And I know you mentioned, and in your works you found that, no matter how much we talk about industrial training workshops, etc., the time to sign up for these training workshops, women at the rural level, they find it very difficult to do so because they have a burden of a lot of chores to take care of, and which is like unpaid work. And that eats into their time and intention to upgrade and skill themselves, or even consider it as an investable option, because they think that anyway, these unpaid work that they are so used to will not give them enough bandwidth to pursue, a technical job full time. So can you share some of the concerns that even skill workshops, signing up for skill workshops pose?
Well, there are many constraints, and right in the beginning, I'd just like to reassert the point that what we are discussing is, I mean, Farzana said it and I've said it, and I think that's a fundamental, that we are discussing an economic issue. It's not a social issue that we are discussing. Yeah. So therefore, every component cannot be resolved and should not be resolved from, say, intra-household, within the household. That is, the mother-in-law allows, the husband allows, etc., etc. All this is an offshoot of the economic, or the lack of economic empowerment and control over women. So the issue of skilling, I mean, first of all, let's decide who we want to skill. All right, do we want to skill rural? Do we want to skill urban? Do we want to skill those who are already skilled? In the sense that those who have passed, are they graduates or postgraduates, or what sector do we want the skilling in? Mm. So therefore, it brings us to the issue, when we talk about future of work, we have to focus it on the past and also on the present, for which you need data. I think that's the first component, is the urgent need for data which exists. So how many women are we looking at? Which sectors and subsectors are we looking at? We cannot take just one sector and say that, yes, this is being done or this should not be done. So there's a whole sectoral issues. I mean, the most important, apart from the rural, if we talk about where women are employed, is in the MSMEs. All right. I'm not even talking about the SHGs, the MSMEs. And MSMEs have a huge role to play in our economic development. They constitute, I think, almost more than 40% of manufacturing output, more than 40% of exports. And they were the ones and I think about 25 or 30% of them are owned by women. MSMEs are owned by women, and where 1/3 of the workers are women. So if we focus on that component, it's also broader policy issues which we have to see. I mean, the pandemic, no succor given, no, reduction of taxes or interest or anything which was given to MSMEs. Corporates, of course, got their, 30 to 15% reduction in the corporate tax, but MSMEs, nothing. Apart from that is the issue of the supply chain. I think that is something which is extremely important, which also have to be focused on, and where along the chain, a whole lot of skilling can go on. Within this is the context which we always talk about, but I don't think we've ever really taken it seriously, is what we call the demographic dividend. Because let's remember, the demographic dividend is going to get over in another 12 to 14 years. Mm-hmm. So our time, what we have for skilling, is extremely short, which is very short. There are two more aspects which I would like to talk on. I don't know whether now or later. One is this work from home, which has been explained so vividly of what is happening. Now, this work from home, of course, has what we call within the household, the sharing of work, etc., etc. That is one aspect. But the problem is the increase in the burden of unpaid care work. And this we have to see in the context of our fiscal architecture and our monetary architecture. So huge reduction in subsidies on clean cooking energy. So women are back to collecting coal and fuel and firewood. Your DBTK, that is your direct benefit transfer of kerosene, gone. The gas cylinders gone. The user fees on transport, etc., which impacts mobility of women, that has also been reduced very dramatically. So the issue of unpaid work can only be resolved at the macroeconomic level, at the national level. And that's the only way, I think, where women are going to come back and find time to get into activities. this last aspect, of course, there are many more which one can talk about, is this entire, when we talk about jobs, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
The number of jobs have declined for men hugely, much, much more than for women. And this trend is something which is continuing. I'm not getting into, the whole development debate, growth first, etc., etc. That's a very broad kind of a context. But policies which are being instituted, one, like I'm a teacher, so I see the new education policy, and where it says that teachers will now be got on contract. Okay, the health policy which says now nurses and work will be got on contract, and these are the sectors where women are employed the most: education, health, ASHA workers who had started with 20 odd schemes to look after, and now it's increased to 72 schemes that they have to look after, but their increments are absolutely either they're held back. The context of women not as workers. So, we keep hearing this very strange term called Sakhis. I mean, what is a Sakhi? A Sakhi is a worker. So you have something like a bank Sakhi, a Pashu Sakhi. I mean, it's only in India that you hear. So it's like getting work done, but not recognizing them as workers. And this is where I think the new labor codes which come in are also extremely problematic, because they redefine work and worker and take away the status of worker from apprentices. So you see a Sumangali scheme or whatever. So when we are training, when we are skilling, what is the future of work going to be? We have to take the present into account. And of course, the issue of violence. I think that is one of the biggest constraints, the actualization of violence and the normalization of violence, not only against women, but all at a broader level. So I think there are many constraining factors to even the skilling, forget about the employment component. Few more aspects, maybe if there's time later, we can discuss.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will now go to Ms. Sirohi. You heard Ms. Diwan talk about, how women face these labels and tags along the journey. And you now are at Meta. You yourself must have faced them up front. So why does technology, in your mind, continue to be such a barrier for women? How much of it is mindset? How much of it is lack of opportunity? What is this barrier that women are not good enough for technology? And why is it that, STEM education, we have so many STEM, we are constantly talking about STEM education, STEM education, STEM education. But why is that, the numbers, the enrollment numbers don't go up? You yourself have fought this battle at a personal level, and today you are at a very senior position in Meta. So if you can share some insights as to why this happens.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Rinku. To me, Rinku, it's less of a mindset and more of a lack of opportunity issue. I mean, it's a scientifically proven fact that women are more likely to explore new things than compared to men. I mean, with due apologies to the men on the panel, and you give them the right direction and the right guidance, they can excel in anything. Historically, we've known the fact that women have had very little time to get exposure to things beyond their household environment. I mean, technology adoption is again one of them. We had this Meta Global State of Small Business survey, and it found that in some countries, more than 1 in 4 female business leaders spend 6 hours or more on domestic responsibilities every single day. I mean, over the years, with increased awareness and, focusing with this empowerment in society for women and with support from public and private initiatives, there has been a reduction in the gender divide, but women still, have come a long way at a very fast pace. I mean, you spoke of, me and my personal example. I myself am merely, I won't say merely, I'll say at least, I am a graduate, and that is that is my qualification. But along the way, some of the things I spoke about earlier and some of the other thing I heard, other panelists speak as well of, opportunities, mentorship, hand-holding, understanding the situation, the context. What does work at home mean for a woman? What do different dynamics that come into play in different demographics mean for a woman? In my own case, I think a little bit of this played along the way, and there were people who were willing to give opportunities. There were people who were willing to be patient with upskilling. Then the nature of technology is so user-friendly. a lot of it now, as it incrementally gets smarter, there are less literacy barriers because things don't have to be read. They can even be heard. They can be seen. People can upskill with, exploring. We see on our social media apps as well that there is a very quick learning from women and all the other people using them because they're very user friendly. One learns from each other. There's peer learning, and this has created an access which I think will, if you get past that traditional, technology learning bit, where the barriers remain much the same. And like some of the other panelists said, it is economic. While gender is there in a background, it is an economic debate as well. And technology and women's role in technology has also suffered with those same dynamics. But having said that, today there is access. And again, of course, come back to talk of our own, platforms. We have now a lot of clear data to show that, women-led small businesses, women who are independent independent sellers of something can really use the power of technology and cut out the middleman and sort of go straight to the customer. Now there is a possibility कि अगर रठौड़ा में कोई अचार बनाता है तो वो उस अचार को खान मार्केट के किसी रेजिडेंट को भी बेच सकता है because there is an appetite for access to market. But there is still a lot of battle to be done in terms of confidence building, of providing that, ability to scale, whether it be through credit, loans, financial support. We've seen that during COVID, I'll quote the Meta Global State of Small Business Survey, that 2/3 of women-led SMBs said that they changed at least one aspect of the way they do business during the pandemic. And we found that, 84% led women SMB reported using digital tools, whether it be, just WhatsApp or whether it just be, any kind of social media platform or the internet in different ways compared to men. And women-led SMBs are most likely to use digital tools for communicating with customers. I mean, the numbers are 57% and more likely for advertising as well. Even on our platforms, we see that women-led SMBs are more likely to use them. So, it's a misnomer to say that they cannot uptake technology or they can't partake technology, or that initial learning has to be built. कि school में STEM नहीं किया, science नहीं किया, या अगर टेक्नोलॉजी का कोर्स नहीं किया या कोडिंग नहीं की तो आप साइंस में पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर सकते. Now science is also an evolved definition. There are so many different ways in which you can interact. We have something called the Meta Business Coach. It teaches you digital skilling, digital marketing, coming online, building businesses, Facebook pages, Instagram abilities, and this is all available through a WhatsApp bot. It has a fair amount of audio, it has a fair amount of video, and it's currently in English and Hindi, but multiple languages are being developed just for that you can learn technology sitting at home, make it easy, make it comfortable for women, understand what their lives in different areas are all about, and then come to a place where you can support them in their own ecosystem. When I was talking about Goal also earlier, and I see Abhishek ji here is a patron of Goal. We've seen such tremendous stories come out from different indigenous populations where they've really leveraged what is possible, whether it be in terms of indigenous herbs or handicrafts or what that unique ecosystem offers, and found great markets for it. We have, case studies from Leh Ladakh, where people have opened different institutes to foster youth and get them to get involved in technology without any formal basis. Yeah. But more to say to your question is that I think that women and technology, women are very agile. They are great multitaskers. I think we have to start changing even the traditional definition of how science has to be learned or what technology means. And I think we have to take this learning to them in different ways where they can also consume it with the constraints they have of their, traditional domestic responsibilities, some of which are not as easily wished away as we think. So, I mean, we're losing out on half the workforce if we can't make it possible for them to reach the means and different, avenues they need to be able to actualize their potential, which is just ready for the taking. And we, like I said, in our programs and in our interactions, because they're very vibrant on Meta platforms, even if it's just as creators contributing to the creator economy, see the number of women creators versus men creators. Even somebody who feels that they can express and earn through a dance form, or just, somebody in a village somewhere who does great comedy and hadn't found an avenue to now. They know how to do this. They can edit videos. They can, very smartly maneuver the camera. They're using all these skills. So isn't that all technology also? So let's widen the definition of technology and understand that the future is very different. And let's make it possible to use all this futuristic technology to get women back into technology.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. So I believe, Mr. Singh, you have another engagement. So I will just take off from where Ms. Sirohi left off. And, we talk about, what about the gender diversity in Digital India programs? So how many women working there and how are they communicating it to the grassroots level? Be honest, sir. So.
Yeah, in fact, again, very interesting aspect. And when we look at our teams, I must say that whether it's my MyGov team or whether it's my Digital India team or whether the National E-Governance team, most of our project teams are much better balanced as compared to most government departments. Like we do have almost 40 to 45% women employees. And what we also realized that when we discuss future of work, what we realized that the pandemic also taught us some lessons. And what we saw that when we allowed work from home, and some of our resources are still continuing to work from home. Work from home came as an asset to many employees because they were not required to commute, and especially commute almost 1 to 2 hours per day, morning, evening. But at the same time, when they moved to their parents' places or to their hometowns, they continued working, and we had the collaboration tools through which they could work. And the women techies who work for us, the developers and the testers and those who write code for our various projects, they were like the most, I must say, happy with the work from home system, because they would confide that sometimes if in the normal course, when they had to work from office, if there was a child who needed care or there was a parent who needed care, they would be forced to take leave on those days. And in the present work from home system, they could balance both. The work-life balance became better for all employees, but more so for women employees, because very often we ignore the kind of efforts women put while fulfilling their official duties, while carrying on the responsibility that are thrust upon them at home. Over and above that, again, another interesting anecdote. One of our developers, she had applied for maternity leave just before the pandemic struck in 2020. And it was approved also. But when the time came for leave in the month of April 2020, she sent a mail that I don't want to take leave. So we wrote back and said that my HR and my admin said that this is like a right and you must, like this is as per the act you are entitled to. She said, yes, I know I'm entitled to, but I don't want to lose out on project work. And since I'm allowed to work from home and I'm allowed to work on this, I do not want to miss out on the exciting work that is being done. So that also kind of was a lesson for us, that can we think of allowing work from home in our normal way of functioning? If that allows greater participation of women in the workforce, and it gives them the flexibility to manage the work that they are doing along with the other responsibility that they have home, should that not become a right rather than something that's an exception during COVID only? So we have, in fact, for most of our tech resources, wherever we are not required, where people are not required to come, we have allowed that to happen. And we do have both men and women working from remote locations. So that has been the practice, that has been the experience in Digital India. And we hope that we will be able to bring in more such features like having creche facility at the office, having proper toilets, because very often, in fact, again, one of my teams told us that we have a common corridor in which most of our team members work. And as I mentioned, 40% of our team members are women, but in a team building, in a team meeting, when I was asking them what else we should do to make workplace better, they mentioned that on the floor, there are 4 toilets, 3 are for men, 1 are for women. So again, these are certain issues which normally people don't have conversations about, but these are all issues that make that help greater participation of women, make workplace safer, make places better than of course the metro station nearby. In fact, very often they say that when they leave work in the evening, especially in winter and all, if there's no light on that, there are incidents of snatching, incidents of eavesdropping and all. So we'll have to address participation of women in a holistic manner and ensure that we remove all the obstacles that come in their way of being able to join in the effort to contribute, join in to play an equal role as men. And once we do that, once we address all these issues, then only we will be able to say that, yes, we are being fair, we are being just.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Singh. And before I go, do you plan to have a creche in your premises?
Yes, we do have.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Singh, because I'm sorry, but Mr. Singh has to rush to another assignment. And we are delighted to have you here today. And thanks for sharing your valuable insights. I'm sure you gained from these discussions as much as we did. And thank you, sir.
Immensely.
Thank you so much.
I'm extremely thankful and grateful to all the panelists, because I was greatly benefited from listening to the views of all the co-panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. So I will quickly switch over to Farzana because she was left out from the last loop. So Farzana, while discussing all of it, we were talking about diversity as a policy. And I know that at least 3 out of 10 employees in TCS are believed to be women. So how has this diversity policy helped TCS break the stereotype of women not being qualified enough for a high-profile tech job? And what kind of diversity policies need to be followed not only by the private sector, but also at the government level to make women count?
So I'll give first an example, a very personal example. So I have 2 sons. In school, they were given an assignment. The entire class was given an assignment to draw a scientist. Yeah. So all the kids drew and gave it to the teacher. The only two boys who drew scientist as a woman were my sons. So someone said, "Oh, so your mother is a scientist?" And they said yes. And then all of the kids started clapping, like 6-year-olds in small,
Yeah.
All the kids started clapping, and they were just so excited to even think that a mother is a scientist.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one. The other thing, so I'm a physicist. So technology comes very easy to me. I'm an astrophysicist and I love tech. I love mathematics. And across my family, I have seen, as someone said, science is a very large thing. It doesn't mean you have to be an engineer or X or Y to be loving technology or science. My grandmother was the most curious person. She wanted to be on Twitter, and we had to tell her, no, you can't write things on Twitter. People will start asking you questions. But she would still go and tweet. She would still go and write things. My mother loves Facebook. My mother is a WhatsApp university. She'll get some message and she'll call, I heard this. I said, you can't pass message like this. So I think, this again a mindset that, saying women are not comfortable with technology, we have to change. Technology is like breathing oxygen. Everyone needs to do it. Yeah. And we have to communicate it to everyone as I say, in our own circle, if we do enough, we are okay as a country, right? We need to, so in TCS, it's not 10 in 3, something like that. You said we are 50% are women. And when we hire, we are absolutely gender agnostic, except for the fact that when we hire, we look at merit. Yeah. When we hire, we look at the best, and it doesn't change for anything. So we have whatever standards of recruitment we have, right? You have to have 60% in class 12, whatever those policies we have it across for everyone. And then as managers and as leaders within the company, we only ensure that the pipeline keeps staying across as much as we can, right? So I joined in 99, the company. We were a very small company at that time, to where we are today. And one of the things I think I have again said it in all my interviews is that we are crazily focused on employee growth as much as we are on customer retention. Yeah. We really focus, and this is not, and as I said, I think at the start, before the group commenced, that the conversation have to be macro, but this is a very particular example I want to give, because you have seen a company go through the growth cycle it has, right? And create the kind of wealth for the group, for itself, for its employees, for its customers, also put India on the global map. When I joined Rinku in 99, we were still considered labor arbitrage. There was no concept of thought leadership. There was no concept saying these people can do transformational things. Today, when I am on the table talking to the Fortune 10 CEOs, thinking about what next the business model should be. So it's been a huge journey for us as a company. It's been a personally huge journey for me as an individual, right? Joining a company when you were 10,000 employees to when you are close to almost 800 million employees worldwide, and these are TCSs, right? Yeah. We have focused on ensuring as much as we can physically and all the managers and leaders, right, that we keep that mix as much as we can, right, of leaders of men and women. We try and proactively see that people don't quit for whatever reason. So whatever was needed to keep an employee, retain an employee, we have done it. Yeah. And that way our policies have evolved, right? So it was not like that a group of leaders sat down and created a policy and then went and force-fitted it across the this. Our policies have always been a work in progress as we have grown. And for us, it was now, and this is the first time I'm actually talking about it. You're growing so fast, right? You're growing from 10,000 employees to 1 million employees to 100 million employees to 700 million employees. Our policies have reflected that change. Our policies have been a part of growth that we as a company and an organization and also as a group have done, right? So a couple of things that I wanted people to think about and take as a thought is that policies have to reflect the times we live in. Policies have to reflect and be inclusive of everything. Yeah. There will always be people in the world, Rinku and my co-panelist, who will try to divide us, right? Whether it's gender, faith, belief, skin color, hair, how you look. When I started working 25 years ago, someone said, oh, she's too pretty. I don't even know what that means. Yeah. You work so hard. You are Mensa, you are an astrophysicist. You're working 20 hours to deliver a project. And people say, oh, so pretty. Yeah. I can say that 24 years later. But at that time, for a young employee, that's like, you're just trying to dilute it into something very funny, right? So you will always have people take away your hard work, your success, and attune it to something else because you're a woman. You'll always have that. Yeah. So you have to just stay the course. You have to own P&Ls. The way I have grown, I have always delivered numbers. I have always driven a P&L. Women will be at a position to call the shots and be policy makers if we hold the finance, if we deliver business, if we hold the purse, we decide the policy. Anyone saying anything else is just doing support action group. Yeah. On that, I hold the money, I deliver the money, I hold the profit, I deliver the profit, I decide the policy for my unit. On that thought, for another example, I have to give this example. It's an important conversation, guys. You have to remember this. So if a woman is going on a maternity leave, right? It's not also about going on maternity. You need the time for your body to heal and for you to bond with your child, right? Yeah. So let's say she is an A+ performer. She comes back after 9 months, 6 months, a year. I will give her the same work that she's equipped to handle if, let's say, she was in workforce for 1 year, right? Very simple thing. But what happens when someone comes back from maternity, people like, oh, she was on a chutti, she was on a break. Let's give her something easy to do. No, give her something challenging to do. So she knows she's an A+ performer. She knows that when she has left her child back and come to work, it's for a higher good and a higher cause. Another example, I have the great privilege of hiring a lot of women, and women go abroad to work. And every time a woman employee in a TCSer, I have many examples, and that's why I have to share this, who have come back and have educated the cousin sisters, have educated the cousin sister-in-laws, have ensured that all the women in the family or all the children in the family or even extended aunts are well supported by that one TCS salary that she draws. Yep. The kind of respect she draws both in her in-laws and at her parents' place, because she's now in Stockholm doing some project, making money, sending it home and sending someone to school. It's a great power. It's a great platform for a woman to be able to do this for others. So the 2-3 important takeaways I would want everyone to have: when you get a woman to economically be strong, you are strengthening her family. It is a economics conversation, not a gender conversation. For India to be a global talent powerhouse and an intellectual capital, we need to have many more entrepreneurs, and we need to have many more women as a part of the economic engine of this country. And that gives me, I get generally very sad when I see another thing that I do when I'm invited to talk on a panel, and I'm the only woman. I write to my ear writes to them and says, Miss Huck will not accept it.
Yeah.
You need to have at least 3 or 2, let's say it's a panel of 5, right? She cannot be the only woman on the panel.
Yeah.
See, these are very small things I'm giving as an example, but it's very important. Otherwise, we'll have only 5 women CEOs and 5 women billionaires, and in a population of 1.7 billion, right?
Yeah, that's
So
what.
these are small actions we need to take.
Yeah, on that thought, we will start with taking some questions that have come in from the audience. Is Miss Kaveri Dutt here in the audience? She represents the Loreto Education Board of South Asia, and she's the province coordinator. Miss Dutt, are you there online? Can we take your question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for a very insightful and scintillating discussion. I think the points raised by all the panelists resonated certainly in my heart and mind, and I'm sure in that of the other viewers as well. My question was with regard to opportunities that are available for skilling for women in rural areas and those belonging to marginalized sections of society. And in my work, this is something that we are struggling with. Many of these girls have dropped out of school and college in the pandemic. So what kind of opportunities would be available for them to earn a livelihood, to be economically independent, and to contribute to society?
So, Mr. Tiwari, would you like to take that question and answer it? This is a real concern, the one of dropouts. And I'm sure you face this also in your skilling workshops, a lot of dropouts post the pandemic. So how do you address this?
So definitely, when we discuss this issue in our organization, what we consistently hear is that skilling is the way out of difficulty for many sections of society, like transgenders, abandoned individuals, women who have been rescued. So skills are the way to integrate many sections of society in the economic mainstream. And just to take care of this, there are skill programs, the government-sponsored skill programs, which take care of these excluded sections in the program design itself. We are ensuring that there are training centers available. Jan Shikshan Sansthan is doing, we have opened more than 200 centers in last 1 year, and 300 more centers are being opened up. So Jan Shikshan Sansthan's, which can reach out to the farthest corner of the country, they are available, and we welcome any block, any area where there is a need for skill centers, Jan Shikshan Sansthan's will be opened up. What we are also doing is that we are providing financial support even for access, that women or sections of society who are far away from the mainstream of education or skill, they are provided transportation allowance. We also provide placement support to the such people, and also financial assistance, because placement also involves movement from one's own place to another place. So the financial support is also provided to the women who have gone out of the education and during the pandemic, etc. So so both from access and from inclusion perspective, we are taking care of it.
Okay. Ms. Dutt, does that answer your question?
Can I just add one
Sure.
point here as an answer? One is that during the pandemic, I mean, this is studies which many of us have done as academicians, is that fellowships were stopped and scholarships were stopped. So that impacted the dropout rate, because even if there was online school, the fees still had to be paid, books still had to be bought. So I think a policy issue also of reducing dropouts is extremely important. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ms. Dewan. Okay, now I'll ask another question that came up from the audience, and feel free to answer. I will ask any of the panelists or all of you to answer this. Can merely skilling women without providing support for childcare and healthcare enable women to step out of domestic roles into the paid workforce? Ritu, would you like to take that?
Yeah, actually, most important, and I thought we had discussed it in some detail. And unless that is done, it's very, very difficult, because and the issue of unpaid work, that's why I'm saying the financial allocations is something which one really has to see in a very fundamental manner. So your allocations for creches has fallen. For maternity benefits, you know, the 2-child norm, the 1-child norm, a debate on even whether that is implemented. To whom it is implemented is another issue, because your definition of work and worker is undergoing a lot of change, and maternity benefit generally being given only to the formal sector, which is only about 10 to 11% of the workforce which exists. So unless there is increased investment in what I call public provisioning, so water, the time women spends in collecting water, the removal of subsidies on gas, I mean, that has really hit women hard. And that also during the pandemic, you know, I think that was one of the most insensitive decisions which could be taken. The reduction in expenditure of Ministry of Women and Child, and that, you know, was not even 1% of the budget, and now it has come down to 0.6%. So, you know, I mean, these are, so rhetoric doesn't matter. It's the financial articulation of the rhetoric which is the most.
You know, I'm going to add here something, ladies, that I want all of us who are listening here to go and look up the Gates Foundation report on caregiving. So Melinda has done a lot of work on this space. I want you to just read it. So it's not only a third world or an India problem. It's a caregiving is serious work. Caregiving to aging parents, in-laws, raising kids. It comes, you know, irrespective of which social strata you are of, and how much affordability of health you can have. But it's a serious thing. And unless, and especially in a country like ours, unless, you know, no private company will have that kind of money. The government will have to step in and at least ensure healthcare is taken care of. You know, it saddens me that in today's age and time, there are still women dying in childbirth.
Yes,
that we still have hunger as an issue with children. You know, children are going famished. This is 2022. What are you talking about infrastructure and growth? And I don't know what we talk about. But as a woman, and forget as a leader, as a woman, that really shakes me up. As I said, you know, both sides of the pond I live in, and it's really sad. You know, how can in today's day and age a woman die in childbirth? Why are you forcing a woman to give childbirth at home? Why are you not having you know, health taken care of a woman? If a woman is not healthy, where will she participate in the economic engine? So no, you know, you can't skill a woman. Woman is very skilled. You take care of everything else.
Well, that's a good thought, and I will just ask, because Madhu, I think, has a call coming in, an international call coming in. So Madhu, your closing remarks, quick one.
Well, I think I'm just going to request to be excused because I have a call right away. But thank you so much for including me in this conversation. It was an absolute delight to hear everyone out. And I think a lot of what we all have said is, if we can take the liberty of saying, speaking for a larger group of people, and you know, speaking to experiences that we have all gone through or observed. So I think let's keep conversations like these going. And thank you so much, Rinku, for inviting me here. Thank you, Farzana. Thank you, Renu. Thank you, sir. And Please excuse me. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone
Thank
to
you so much.
whoever's listening.
Thank you. Okay, now may I call upon Dr. Niharika Vora. She is the Vice Chancellor of Delhi Skill Development and Entrepreneurship University, and let her sum up the session.
Thank you, Rinku, for inviting, and I'm not sure if it is possible to sum up a session of this kind where there have been so many disparate conversations. I was thoroughly enjoying and being challenged, listening to various conversations from Ritu, Farzana, Mr. Tiwari, Abhishek, and Madhu. And all I would like to say is, I think, just like has been said, that we need to do public provisioning for some of the care giving that for some of the work that women do. I think as again, as institutions of higher education, of policy making, and so on and so forth, I think it's really crucial for us to also think about how do we really include the women who don't typically have access to good quality education. So while there are women, in the schools and in colleges from middle to upper middle homes who are now getting education and are possibly equally empowered to do what they need to do, but I think for women in the sector that we are looking at, which is a much larger sector than the one that we actually end up serving, I think it requires a fair amount of policy intervention. It requires skilling intervention. It requires actually money being put on some of these processes. And just money being put is never going to be sufficient. You need to provide the scaffolding for some of this to happen.
Yeah.
And I think some of the things that have recently been done, for example, the government of Delhi has created this whole process of the Saheli Samanvaya Kendra, which is basically in the Anganwadi hubs. Rather than one Anganwadi, they've created like 4 or 5 together. And they have created a structure which allows for women, for the community, not just the people who need to have their young children being taken care of, but for the community of women, a place where some of their nutrition, health, skilling and entrepreneurship conversations can happen, and also their access to some of the schemes that are being talked about can be facilitated, is quite interesting. And I think we, with IWH and the Delhi government and the DSCU, has actually done a study of these Anganwadi hubs and the Saheli Samanvaya Kendra to see whether what is the appetite for entrepreneurship or livelihoods among these women. And no surprises, huge appetite, but very little readiness. So while many of them have access to smartphones, while many of them also access, the internet on their phones, they only do it for very small periods of time. They don't necessarily use it for business, and for many times, very interestingly, there are actually very few ideas they have for business. So it's almost like a poverty of ideas because of lack of perspective. In very often, they will only know कि मेरे को अचार बनाना आता है, I will make some achar, or I know how to knit, I can knit some socks to sell, and there is only so much appetite in the market for something like this. So I think what is interesting is that not only has the Women and Child Department partnered with a university like ours, where what we are saying is we will go into these Anganwadi hubs and we will understand and actually skill the women We will support them in setting up their enterprises. We will not be a grant giving institution, right? We will not be handing out some grants so that you can start a business, but we will help them to ideate, to learn the skills, to come up with their own passion project, convert it into a business, and then create it into a livelihood. And I'm not trying to sell ourselves or anything. All I'm saying is that maybe here is an experiment, which is where we are saying, let us go to the women, let us go to their homes and figure out what will help them to create a livelihood, and then provide all the support that is required to do it. And I think, if we are a country of 1.7 billion, we have multiple levels of challenges that we face and issues that need to be addressed. And the only way in which we can possibly even start addressing some of them is if different individuals at different levels work sincerely on each of these. And again, I think all of us sitting here are a product of the education that we received, of the opportunities that came with the education, and also the support that was given to us for us to do what we needed to do. And all I'm saying is that I think we will need to do, each one of us, the government, higher education institutions, civil society organizations, NGOs, the NSDCs, and all of us will have to do our bit in providing all of this. Skilling, helping people to, providing the support, and then also ensuring that they have whatever is required in their environment to be able to, to pursue their dream and create a livelihood. And as rightly pointed out by Farzana, when you have a woman start earning money, she just does not earn it for herself, she earns it for the entire family, and her position and status and her ability to help other women just changes exponentially. And I think we need to set that in motion. So while the future of works reports show that a lot of the jobs that exist today are not going to exist even 5 years from now, very scary when you think about it, but I think they are still thinking about a very small layer when they are thinking about it. There's still a very large fat bottom which needs to be addressed, looked at, and empowered. I'm sorry, I take my word empowered, that's such a patriarchal word. Really taking that away. I'm saying providing them the opportunity to actually reach their potential, and that's what I think is the need of the hour. So maybe I will stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Vora. And it was indeed, and I hope that, I think today's discussion, we have a lot of takeaways. And as you said, we are just, 5 years down the line is a very scary scenario. So if there is scope for any mid-course correction, it is now. And I hope that somebody is listening in on these takeaways and acting on them. On that note, may I invite my colleague, Pooja Pillai, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Dr. Vora, that was a great way to sum it up. We'd also like to thank our presenting partner, iWage, for helping us put this series together. Thanks everyone who joined us. We'll be in touch as we announce the next event, focusing on specific aspects of gender in a bit to get a deeper understanding of the challenges that lie ahead and to find some direction. Good night.
Good night, and thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ms. Devan. Thank you, Ms. Haq. Thank you, Dr. Vora. Thank you, Mr. Tiwari, for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I think it's so well.